You can have all the knowledge in the world and still feel lost. Why? Because knowledge is cheap. Embodiment is rare. You don't become powerful by collecting concepts. You become powerful by truly living them. That's where transformation actually happens. Hey everyone, it's Ricardo checking in. And today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about this concept of knowledge versus knowing. It's a concept that's been pretty alive in my life for the past 5 years, to be honest. But in particular, right now, it's very active. And I just want to share the differences between knowledge and knowing and how they can really impact our lives. I'm sure you've heard knowledge is power. But what does that actually mean? I might should explore that a little bit. What is knowledge? As we begin to question and sit with this, it starts to become a little bit more clear. Knowledge is more associated with something that's conceptually understood, something we can understand with our minds. However, knowing is something that is more of a living wisdom. It's really simple to confuse the consumption of information and understanding to actual transformation. I know I'm guilty of it, especially in my earlier years where I would consume a lot of information and mistake that with wisdom. All this information that I would accumulate in my mind, what did it serve me? Yes, it helped open up different ways of understanding and perceiving situations around me, but it just lived in my mind. I wasn't actually putting it into practice. So instead of actually experiencing the shifts, I was intellectualizing it, thinking about it, thinking I understood, but in reality, I had no idea. There were very few moments, well, I'll share a little bit, where it clicked. When I actually experienced what I was learning about and it became something that I was alive and that I moved through, that's when I truly understood. And that's when the information transferred over from knowledge, conceptual, intellectual, to knowing, a living wisdom, something I've moved through. And I think of a really good example that applies to almost every aspect. It's, for example, if I were to read a book about weightlifting and going to the gym, is that going to equate to me actually getting physically fit? No way. The action has to be put. The application of that knowledge into knowing needs to take place in order to really see and benefit from that transformation. And as I was mentioning a little bit earlier, as I first started working with the medicines, in particular one which we'll call grandmother out of respect for the medicine, this medicine is known to activate and stimulate a region of the brain that's associated with learning. So it's common after you sit with this medicine that you're in a state where you're just wanting to learn, you're open to learn. And I took full advantage. I started to consume so much information and just take it all in. And it was exciting. And I learned so much and it helped me in a lot of ways. However, came a point where it just became an overindulgence. It wasn't serving that. I was taking in the information, it was there. And then in conversation, I can access it and share it with the person. And I got to the point where pretty much I was just regurgitating information, just saying what I heard to other people and pretending like I knew what I was saying and pretending like there was impact behind it. The information and the wisdom within those words very much exists and very much is alive. And perhaps those people took from it what they needed. However, for myself, I can call myself out. In that moment, I was more just regurgitating information to other people that I heard. But then came a very powerful experience. We get into like these buzzwords, like, oh, you have to forgive, you have to be compassionate, which yes, it helps in the process. But until I experienced it really firsthand, it's like, okay, this is what it means. And not to get into too much detail, but I was in a pretty challenging situation with someone who I love. They were in an extremely toxic relationship and I was concerned for their safety. And I harbored so much anger towards their partner to the point where it started to affect me. And it got really intense. And ultimately I got to a certain point where I understood there was nothing I could do. There was nothing else I can do. This person was blinded by love and saw no flaw in what this person was doing to them. And I had to accept it. And in that moment, once I was able to get into acceptance of this release of just like really understanding it doesn't matter what I do, nothing's gonna change because she doesn't want it to change. That's when I really got into a place where I can let go of my anger of that person and forgive them. And honestly, it's crazy because the next day that person called me. It's like, hey, you need to get this person out of here. I don't want anything to do with them. Just like that. And that's when I really started to understand the power of the information. It's like, whoa, okay. I've been going for years thinking it was this, and thinking I understood, intellectualizing what I thought it meant. But now that I experienced it, it's something completely different. My cells know it, my body knows it, my spirit knows it. And now it's something that's within my being. It's alive. And that's when I really start to understand, okay, yes, it's good to expose ourselves to information. However, let's take the time to really digest that information and really apply it in our lives. That's where the true wisdom and the power comes from. And then I started to really reflect on these loops and these patterns, right? Stress eating. I used to drink, or when I used to smoke. What was I trying to fill? Because I started to notice that this consumption of information was something very similar. Obviously, it's different, it's healthier than those other habits. But when you get to the core, it's like, okay, I'm not feeling good, I'm gonna read. Okay, great, I feel inspired by this information, I feel good, now what? And many times, especially earlier, many times it just stayed that way. It stayed there. It was just access in the bank vault to bring out in conversation or to think about, ponder sometimes here and there. And I just invite myself to observe these tendencies. And now when we start to consume information, let's take the time to digest it, to allow it to sit with us, and more importantly, to put it into practice. A lot of the work in the ceremonies that we do, we speak about integration. And in my opinion, integration is the most important aspect of ceremony, of life, and of converting knowledge into knowing. It's really powerful to go through a huge experience or to learn a lot of great information and just see life through a different lens. However, if we don't do anything with that, that lens will fade. It will fade. And if we keep repeating those old patterns that we used to do, we're just gonna eventually get back to the same place. So I like to tie this into integration. Let's take the time to really apply. It's not so much about gathering all this information and then just being stuck with it. Let's take little bits, let's digest it, and then really put the work in to apply to our lives, to convert that knowledge, that intellectual knowledge, into a living wisdom. Then we can speak from experience, and not just from books. We speak from experience, and that's where I truly found we can really step into our power and have access to that information always, because we've experienced it, we know it now. So a little tip I'd like to share, and I like to share this with people who just leave ceremony, and just kind of tie this in that, honestly, as one teacher really made it to light to me, the real ceremony, the great ceremony, is life. And a little integration tip that I like to offer people is sometimes we can feel so overwhelmed with all the information that we're digesting or all the things that we have to do, that we choose to do. What I like to do is make a list and put a priority, which one has top priority. Whatever has top priority, I will take that and I will just focus on that for the next couple of weeks. Find a way to integrate it into my day-to-day practice. Usually what helps me is tying it along with something that I enjoy. So if I want to journal, for example, I've done this. Before I have my cup of coffee, I will journal. And what does that do? It's like a classical conditioning, because I enjoy coffee, I get excited for it, and I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to coffee. And now that I'm starting to tie on journaling, guess what? Subconsciously, I'm programming myself to get to feel those emotions for journaling. So it's something that's really powerful. And once I focus on a specific thing that I want to integrate in my life for a couple of weeks, once I feel it's pretty much a habit, which usually it feels like if I go a day without doing it, it doesn't feel good, then I know that it's a habit, then I can start to add on the next one. So many times before, I come out inspired with so much information. I try to integrate and apply so many different things that I ended up staying stuck in neutral. I'm juggling too many balls, and finally I'm just like, there's no way I can do this. So I just stop completely. So I found it's way more efficient and helpful to just focus on one thing at a time and to take my time with it. So this is a tip that's been really helpful for me, and that I just want to share with you all as well. And just like anything else in life, knowledge becomes knowing through repetition. For myself, I love guitar, but I had to practice to get to a certain point where I am now. And I continue to practice, I continue to learn and continue to evolve. So having that patience and that understanding that it is a practice and it is one step at a time, but consistency is key. It's this concept of compound growth. If I do 1% better every day, I might not notice much at first, but at the end of the year, that's 365% improvement. And that's when you really start to notice a difference in your life. So I invite you to really take a look in your life and reflect. What's one bit of truth or one bit of wisdom that's present in your life? And really put the attention on applying it into your life. The attention on it and the intention to apply it to your life. Are you moving through heartbreak? Are you moving through fear? Are you moving through a death of a loved one? Or through someone overstepping your boundaries? I invite you to do a little bit of research and figure out what are some things that I can do to help myself through this, move through this. Then I invite you to apply it. Apply one little bit into your day-to-day life. Change something. If I know that someone overstepped my boundary and I didn't say anything, okay, next time they overstep it, use my voice, even if it's uncomfortable. Okay, well, I know what this path is gonna do. I know where this is gonna lead, and I don't like that. I don't enjoy that. So I'm gonna try something different. And if you still don't know after your research where to really start, feel free to reach out. Maybe I don't have the answer, but maybe I can point you in a direction and help you get to the answer that you're looking for. We also have a community. We have our tribe. I think oftentimes we think that we have to do this all by ourselves, and that's so far from the truth. I was reading this beautiful book, The Warrior Within, and he made it extra clear that it's okay to rely on our tribe. And I have found so much power in that in my process, especially when I first started. I thought I have to do this all alone, get through it. And ultimately, I came to a very powerful understanding and knowing. Like, my growth and my healing has been exponentially greater since I started to share with my tribe and to have people who I can lean on and to be open and get things out of my mind and sharing with someone so that I can actually see them. Because it's one thing in my mind. And oftentimes when I say it out loud, it's like, that's silly. Why was I thinking that? And it's not so much about the advice that they give, but just the space that they hold and me being able to express myself and see it more in a physical form. When the words exit my mouth, when the thoughts exit the mind and become out here in the physical reality, that helps bring clarity in itself. So just a friendly invitation. And now I'd just like to highlight that knowing is a felt sense, not just a thought. I've been speaking a lot about this concept of embodiment, and essentially that's what knowing is. It's when the information from my mind begins to settle into my body, into this living experience. And for me, this is often a feeling of flow. I feel such a sense of presence when I'm going through that knowledge transferring into knowing. There's this deep presence and this feeling where it's like alchemy. It's difficult to really put into words, but I can feel it in my being. Vibrationally, I feel stronger. I feel more centered. And again, like I said, I feel very present. And this knowing comes from deep presence, from quiet confidence, and from calm action. Once it becomes integrated into my body, everything shifts. And this is where I started to associate it with this concept of the inner master. I went through this quest of trying to access as much information as I can, of learning more about the shamanic path. And I came across a lot of teachers, and all of them told me the same thing, which drove me crazy in the beginning. It drove me crazy. And they would all say, when I would ask to learn from them, said, yeah, I'll be happy to share information with you, but I can't teach you anything. You're your own master. And it would drive me crazy, trust me. It's like, well, I'm asking you for help, I need help. And it didn't make sense until it did. And once it did, I understood what this inner master was. And this understanding that we have the answers all within us, each and every single one of us. And as we begin to cultivate this silence, this space of the thoughts just auto going in our mind, and really be present, we create enough space to connect with what I call the inner master. Other people can call it divine. You can call it whatever you want, but it's this place of knowing. And when I'm able to create enough space for my thoughts and be really present, I can ask any question that I have. And intuitively, the answer comes, that knowing comes, that deep presence, that quiet confidence, and that knowing of what calm action I will do. And just one example, in one of my ceremonies, I was going in and I had gone through a rough patch, and my intention was for that evening to get a good sacudida, which is a Spanish word. And it's the action of when you take a rug outside, you just kind of, right? Get all the cobwebs, get all the dirt, everything off. And that was my intention. And then I connected with the inner master. And actually, the inner master interjected in that moment. It's like, be careful what you ask for. Is that what you really want? And as I began to reflect, I'm like, yeah, maybe not. Maybe I don't want to get my ass kicked tonight. So that I was able to really, with the power of words, cultivate what I wanted to express, really. And since, as I've been sharing, I love guitar, I connected with the guitar and understood I'm going to ask for a tuning of my being. It's more of a gentle process. If it's too low, kind of tightening up the string. If it's too high, loosening the string. So it's more of a finesse action. And after that first dose and my experience that I had, I'm like, oh, man, I am so glad I decided to choose for the experience to be more of a refinement of my being as opposed to getting a sacudida. So as I've continued to build this relationship with the inner master, it's been so powerful to be able to access whenever, and even more beautiful, sometimes he'll come in when I'm maybe not as present and loose with my words or loose with what I'm doing, and he'll kind of slap me back into presence like, hey, what are you really asking for right now? What are you really doing? And that's been something that I've been so grateful for. So this is the whole basis of everything that I share, is the inner master. And I'm glad I was able to finally really find the video to be able to express it a little bit more. And my final thought is to be the proof. Words are cheap. They are. And I'm guilty of it too. I haven't always kept my word, and it's something that I'm working on and bringing presence to and attention on, and really wanting to be firm with my word. And that's why I value more being. Less words, more action. And I heard this quote that's been really profound for me, but I want to get to the point where my actions won't need an explanation. Everything will be understood through my energy, and that's where I want to get to. That's what I'm working to get to be so clean energetically with my intention that I won't have to be misunderstood. That people will understand me just by what I do, just by being. And that's something I strive for and something I'm working on. And it's an invitation for you all as well to really get clear on our being and to become the proof, be the change in the world that you want to see. Do what you can with your life and bring it back into ourselves. I know it's easy to get overwhelmed and see everything that's going on in the world and thinking that we have to solve it all, but honestly, all we can really take ownership for is ourselves. So how are we going to treat ourselves? How are we going to treat the community around us? How do we choose to be? What form of inspiration do we want to give those around us? So just a little invitation, dial it back, bring it back to yourself, and exist within that vibration that you choose to exist in. So if you're ready to stop learning and to start living, I invite you to pick one principle, focus on it and apply it. Become the proof. I want to thank you all for watching and for your support. It's meant a lot to me, and I'm so grateful for it. And just want to share that I have a link to my newsletter where I share more about topics like this that are currently alive in my life and what I'm doing to move through them, just to give a little bit more insight of how I'm moving through it and maybe can serve you. And for those of you who would like to connect a little bit deeper, I also have a link to my Calendly. Feel free to book a call. We could talk about different principles, what's moving in your life, and I'd be more than happy to accompany you through your process. Until next time, family, hausch hausch.